Good morning, everybody. Welcome. My name is Shatrine Krake. I'm with the Oswego Chamber of Commerce, the Executive Director, and the Clackamas County Business Recovery Centers. This morning, we are welcoming Miss Jessica Ortman. She's going to speak to the modern recruitment mindset strategy for 2022. So excited about this. And then we have Heather, excuse me, I want to make sure I said it right. He's joining us from PaySuite, but he also has been business owner. He's worked with employees, all that. And so he is going to give his input today too. So we're so excited. And Jessica, go ahead and take it away.
Great. Well, thanks everybody for joining us this morning. And yeah, I'm Jessica. I work at a company called HR Annie Consulting. And before digging into all the details here, just a little background on HR Annie. We're a small woman-owned consulting group here based in Portland, about 15 employees, and we have 3 different parts of our business. One is an HR consulting side of our company that can help out with handbooks, policies, employee relations coaching. Then we also have a training channel that trains on everything under the HR umbrella. Hot topics of the year. And then we have our recruitment channel, which I oversee here. And we have 3 lovely other recruiters that help our clients who are normally small to mid-sized businesses locally here and a few across the United States, helping out with hiring strategy, as well as actually performing hiring as their internal resource. So thanks so much for having us this morning, and can't wait to give you a little bit of insight to the trends that we've been seeing this year and strategies around gearing up moving into next year for recruitment. So big question here is, where do I start? And it seems overwhelming. There's a lot of pieces to this. So we're going to break it down into, I think it's 4 really manageable questions that we can chat about and strategize around. And I do want to just say from the beginning that there's, of course, not a one-size-fits-all solution. Every company's different, which is great. And that's totally fine. And throughout these questions, we will address, how there are differences in there and how we capitalize on those differences too. So first question that I think is important to address before getting into everything else is, what are the obstacles that people are facing? They're not the same obstacles that we have always faced in hiring. These are newer obstacles that everyone is still trying to find the solution or workaround for. So we'll be chatting about that. The second step will be, how do we adjust in a candidate-driven market? We'll talk about the fact that it has turned from an employer-driven market to a candidate-driven market. What does that mean for us, and what do we need to do with that? Then we're going to look at your company, and I'm going to give you some questions to think about and just figure out, what is your competitive edge as an organization, and how do we leverage that in the recruitment process? Final piece, speaking of recruitment process, what is yours, and are there any tweaks or adjustments that we should be making in order to move into this next year? So as I mentioned, the first topic I wanted to just kind of quickly address are current obstacles or new obstacles that have shown themselves, especially through the past 1 to 2 years. Number one, pretty obvious, is safety. There's a lot of people who are concerned about going back to work because of a variety of different reasons surrounding safety, whether that be, different variants surging, or, anxieties around, whatever status of vaccinations or what company policies are for sanitation. So if we're just putting ourselves in the candidate's shoes, just know this is something that's swirling on in the back of their head when they're going out and applying for roles. So one thing you can do as an employer is kind of get ahead of those question marks. What are your policies and what are your practices? And are there ways to reasonably weave that into your job ad that you have, or address those in an interview, just to make sure people don't have question marks and you're, filling in those questions so they don't have those, worries. The second obstacle that I've seen, and this has really been strong in the food and beverage industry or any in-person customer service, is stability. There have been candidates who have, started 2 or 3 different positions over the course of the year. They, go out there, apply for all these jobs, go through all these interviews, meet all their new team, go through their training, get enrolled in their benefits, and then things shut down. So they have to start again. They go through the whole process again with another employer. It gets shut down. This might be their third or fourth time trying. So just think about, again, being in the candidate's shoes, it can feel really defeating. So how are we as the employer sharing with the candidate that we are providing a stable work environment? If we are, if that's an area where your business has, thrived in the past year, then that's a great thing to address in the strategy. If maybe that has been an area that has, there's been opening and closing, maybe there are some, processes and procedures you now have in place that you can share to fill those question marks. Another one is childcare. And that kind of ties in with the stability, is that now with, schools going back in person, people are concerned, what if my kid needs to end up quarantining? Or what if, the schools go back online? What is my life going to look like? In this space of recruitment, we don't necessarily need to be getting in front and having that conversation immediately, but it is something to think about and know that that is in the back of someone's mind. So what are your policies? Do you have something in place that you can share that's appropriate at some point throughout the process? Again, not a one size fits all solution, but just something to think about when we're thinking of where candidates are at the moment. Another obstacle is advertising. There is a lot of noise going on everywhere because everyone's hiring. We're seeing people hiring on Facebook. There's employee referrals programs where, all of the employees are going out and recruiting. People are texting, with notifications for jobs. There are QR codes on restaurant menus for links to job applications. So there's all these different ways that people are getting the word out there that they're hiring. How are you doing that? Because if we're simply posting an ad on Indeed and sitting and waiting for, our perfect match to find us, we may need to, revisit our tactics. So there's companies like HR Annie that are able to help you get above those noise and, get the word out there that you are hiring. One other thing I want to say about advertising is making sure you understand the difference between a job description and a job advertisement. A job description is used for a lot of amazing purposes within the business. If there's ever any sort of, doctor's note that's needed to be returning to work, or if there's performance management that needs to be done. But make sure you also have a separate job advertisement that you're using for marketing purposes when you're going out and posting your role. This should have, fun language that's representative of your company culture. It should have, great information about your benefits and compensation, and it can be a little bit more playful and fun. So definitely recommend reviewing that, or, talking to me. This is what we do for all of our clients. And then the last thing that's an obstacle, and this is what the next slide will be about, is just that it's a candidates market. And with it being a candidates market, employers are raising their pay. They're throwing out these crazy benefits they've never done before. They have changed up hours, and all the tools are being pulled out of the tool belt. So it just really requires us as a business to look at what's in our tool belt and how do we compete with this. So how are we going to thrive in a candidate-driven market? So a few pieces about this. There are a few different ways and tools we can use to thrive in a candidate-driven market. One, when we're reviewing obstacles that we just looked at, we're thinking, okay, what shoes is this candidate walking in? What are they feeling? What is important to them? What are they experiencing? And then how do you as an employer adapt to that? So I'll give one example of how you might adapt. So well, actually, I'll even back it up for a second here. In a candidate-driven market, I read a study the other day, and there's research out there showing that there are really 3 things that matter to a candidate. There's pay, enough to have a livable wage. There is their ability to live outside of work. So their work-life balance, can they make it to their kids' soccer practice? If they have a doctor's appointment, do they have to use their PTO, or do we have some sort of flexible schedule going on? And then the third thing is that they feel like they're making a difference on their community and that their work actually means something. And so if we're looking at that from the candidate's lens, what is it that they are wanting? It's those 3 things. So how can we make sure that we are adapting to those 3 things? If we're thinking about pay, sometimes that's a tool you can use. And there's companies, I think of examples of travel nurses, like compensation for travel nurses tend to be higher than maybe nurses that might be at a nonprofit. And if I'm looking at the two different candidates that would be interested in one role versus the other, the travel nurse candidate is probably looking for more adrenaline. They probably don't care as much about work-life balance, and they probably are a lot more attracted to pay. And that's great. Whereas if we're a nonprofit nurse, we're probably a little bit more interested in, maybe our mission and the mission of the nonprofit. We probably want a little bit more work-life balance, and we understand that that might come with an at-market wage versus an over-market wage. See how both examples, it's not wrong that a company can't offer all of the things, but what is it that you can offer? And let's make sure that we capitalize on that and take advantage of your competitive edge. Another way that we can thrive in a candidate-driven market is reviewing our process. And we were actually just talking about this before we jumped on the call. And one of the processes we were talking about is what is it that we're asking from candidates along the way? Because right now in a candidate-driven market, candidates are getting multiple offers. They're getting them faster than they've ever gotten before. They're more competitive than they've ever been before. And so when we are going through this interview process with candidates, they might be interviewing 5 other companies for a job, and we might be interviewing 5 other candidates for a job, and we're on an even playing field here. It's not just a one-way street where we need them to give us information. We need to be giving them information. We need to be going through this process as if we were job seekers. It's the same thing. So making sure that we are not taking for granted that we have a great candidate in front of us. One of the other pieces to that is the swiftness of interviews. We used to be able to post jobs and have all these amazing people come in and take our week to, review all of the amazing resumes. After a week, we get to call everybody back and, have them come in for an interview. And now if we're going through those resumes, 1 to 2 days with them coming in, what you're going to be left with is a pile of resumes of people that already have received jobs elsewhere. So when you do decide that you're ready to hire, make sure that you are ready when you post the job to begin your interviews. And some best practices is just making sure that you're contacting people, like I said, within 1 to 2 days of them applying. I always recommend 1 to 2 days, after having that initial contact, that's when the interview is scheduled. 1 to 2 days after that first interview. If there's a second one, probably needs to be 1 to 2 days within that. And then probably 1 to 2 days, getting an offer out there and making sure that we're staying in communication with the candidate along the way so they know what our process is, how long it's going to take, because again, as they go through our process, they are getting recruited by other people. And most importantly, what I want to not forget is that as important as it is to be competitively recruiting new hires, it is very, very important to be looking at our current employees through the same lens. How can we make sure that this is the place that they want to stay so they don't become someone else's candidate? Because a lot of companies are hiring, there's lots of opportunities, and that's amazing that we're focusing on, making this process awesome and competitive for, new people joining our team, but we also do not want to have to be constantly filling spots. So that is equally as important. How are we providing, advancement opportunity for, our internal employees? Are they being compensated at market, or can they go out and apply for a job and make more since all of the wages have gone up, locally? Is there a flexible work environment that you can provide? Because again, work-life balance also, might be something that they're going to try to seek out. Is there remote work opportunity? There's all these stones we can turn over, and really at the end of the day, there's no right answer. But what I do challenge you to do is look at these things and have this activity with yourself saying, what would it take to have a remote work environment? What would it take to have a hybrid environment? What would it take to have a flexible work schedule if people wanted to work 7 to 4 instead of 8 to 5, or, other hours? What would it take just for fun? What would we need to do? Same for pay. What would it take if we needed to, review the market and make sure everybody's at market wage? So I encourage a lot of asking that question. This is the year of what would it take in order to make these adjustments? And it's not that that's going to be the right answer, but it's nice to run through that exercise because it may not take as much as it seems like it would. All right. And we talked a little bit about this competitive edge and how there are 5 different areas where companies can really thrive and differentiate themselves. And I have this little stool picture here because not everybody's going to have all of the legs on this. They're not going to have all 5 things and be the most competitive in all 5 areas. And you don't have to be. All people have different, things that they're looking for in roles. I interview, several people every week, every month, and reasons as to why they're leaving their current employers or leaving their current jobs vary. But I can guess, 10 out of 10 times it's going to be one of the 8 out of 10. It'll be a reason on this list. They're looking for more pay. Maybe when I look at total compensation, maybe they don't have any benefits that are offered. Flexible and remote work, that is really important to people right now. Culture and mission, having them feel like what they're doing is, a part of a bigger purpose. And the last one is advancement and opportunity for growth. So I encourage you to look at all these areas and say, which areas do I want my company to focus on? And dial it down to 2 or 3. You don't need to have all of them. If you want to say, our culture and mission, that's a strong point of our company. Great. So what do you want to do with that? What is your mission statement? What is your value statement? Are you sharing that in your job advertisement? Are you telling candidates about that during the interview process? And not only are you telling them about it, but how do you apply that in the day-to-day? And what will they be experiencing as a candidate of this company if this culture and mission is really that strong? Same for advancement opportunity. These two, both cost nothing. This is a non-monetary way that you can differentiate yourself. Advancement opportunity. Are you requiring every candidate to have 5 years of experience? Are there any positions where someone's amazing soft skills and tenacity and go-getter attitude could be better than somebody having 5 years of experience that's burnt out and is kind of tired of doing what they're doing? And would you entertain interviewing people like that? And again, you don't have to, but what would it take in order for that to work at your company? Interesting. So I challenge you to take a screenshot, write these 5 things down. I know Shatrine's recording this, so if you want to come back to this and look at it later and just say, what would it take for me to enhance 2 or 3 of these areas in my company? How do I embed that through my recruitment process? And how am I also not forgetting about my current employees and making sure that they still feel excited to work here as well? Okay. And I think we're almost done with slides here, and then we'll get to some live Q&A and chats with Imran. So here we go. What's your process? So what are you, we talked about this a little bit too, about how in this now candidate-driven market, we are required to have a swift and efficient process. And so I want to go back to saying there is no right answer as to what you should be doing. However, there are certain things you could be doing that will give you better chances to hire someone. So I highly encourage you reviewing your process and removing maybe the unnecessary steps that have just over time kind of happened to fall into your lap, and you're doing them now and you might not know why, but it's just because that's what has happened. So starting off, what are you requesting from candidates during the application process? I'm huge at, again, putting yourself in the candidate's shoes. Let's pretend, we're all looking for jobs, and we go out to Indeed, we go out to LinkedIn, we're looking at all these companies, doing all this research, and we're applying to jobs. Let's pretend there's one company with an amazing advertisement. You can feel their culture. It's not just a job description copied and pasted. There's stuff about benefits, there's stuff about culture and team building, and really exciting description of what this position would be doing. The qualifications, you meet them all, and there's nothing, not 10 plus years of experience needed to do the job. You're feeling great. you want to submit your application. One company has an upload your resume here and a question that says, why do you want to work here? Cool. That might take me 5 minutes, right? And then I move on to my next submission. This other company, maybe what they want is your resume uploaded and then your resume rewritten in another text format box for some reason, and a cover letter that is basically explaining what's on your resume and, several other questions, which is going to take you a half an hour. When we're looking at that, not only are candidates thinking like, oh my gosh, this is going to take me forever, but it also gives them an insight into the company saying, are there a lot of these sort of, arbitrary steps throughout the process? Like if I were to be an employee there, are they modern? Are they efficient? And so not only is it just the thought of it taking a long time or maybe possibly deterring them from applying to your company, but it also shows that, things might not have been reviewed in a year or two, and that might be the case throughout the company. So it's a good chance to, get the candidate feeling excited about you based on what you're asking them. It's a reflection of your organization more than you know. Secondly, and by the way, I do want to just note that my recommendation for what to request for candidates is a resume, and maybe them answering, 2 or 3 questions like, hey, are you able to work these hours? What is your favorite part about our company culture that stands out to you on our job ad? And, why are you the perfect fit, or something like that. When we get into cover letters and all those attachments, again, there's no right or wrong. If that's part of your process, that's okay. But I do challenge you to say, what is it that I am trying to receive by getting this cover letter? What is the value I'm getting? And is there maybe a different way I can get that same information, whether that be over a phone call or, baking certain questions in at different points of time. So again, no right or wrong, but I do just challenge to think, what would it take to not ask for a cover letter? Let's see here. And then 2, how quickly are we contacting candidates? I already talked a little bit about that earlier. My recommendation is 1 to 2 days within them applying, and just making sure, if you aren't ready to recruit, I think there were some practices that people got used to where they used to just post a job and always have it up there and just collect resumes like they were going to be able to pull from them at some point down the road and have all these people that were interested in working for the company. And really all that does is it makes people not believe in your process, that when you have a posting up, you're actually going to contact them. So I actually recommend not leaving a posting up or open if you're not actively going to be reaching out to candidates, because maybe down the line when they are interested again and ready to, apply, they think, oh, I've already sent my resume in twice there and they've never contacted me, so I'm going to give up. So making sure that when you do post, you're ready to go. 3, how many rounds of interviews do you conduct and how do you conduct them? Again, no right or wrong answer. However, what I would recommend and what I've seen be most successful is usually 1 to 2 rounds of interviews for entry-level, mid-level positions. If you are hiring for a leadership role or another position in your team, I totally understand needing to possibly add a 3rd round. But make sure that whatever your process is, that you're also sticking to it for each person that you are entertaining for the job. Also, that ties back to bigger purposes like diversity, equity, inclusion, making sure that we're giving everybody the same opportunity to go through the process. They're meeting with the same people. We're asking them all the same questions. So we don't let, any little biases slip in there. So it's really good to know your process and also know, I see, rounds and rounds and rounds and rounds of interviews. And there's been a new thing called video meetings, which has been amazing. And the benefit of that is that if we do want to meet a candidate, maybe for the first time, maybe we don't invite them into the office, maybe we do a video interview, and that allows them to do it from their lunch break in their car. Normally, we can end up getting an interview faster with the candidate if we are a little bit more flexible with their process versus them having to ask for time off. It takes a week, then they can finally come into the office. Whereas other companies are doing video meetings, getting 3 rounds done in the week during that person's lunch break by the time you get your first meeting with them. So strongly encourage using video to your advantage. And then let's see here, the last question, who needs to be involved and why are they involved? Again, just encouraging you to revisit that. It's really awesome to have collaboration and having, different people be a part of the interview process. But what that also takes is a lot more scheduling and coordinating. And if who you have involved ends up pushing out the interview process to where you can't get everybody's schedule within a week, I encourage you to revisit that group and say, is there 2 of us maybe that really need to be there that we trust to make this decision on behalf of the team? And let's just get our 2 calendars together, because again, time is of the essence when it comes to recruitment. Okay, great. And then I don't know if I should do this last slide first or if we want to break into Q&A, but I just wanted to kind of end this initial conversation by putting down some measurable deliverables that I'm challenging everybody to either take on, or feel free to, give me an email if you want some help. Number 1, again, going back to what we talked about earlier, what is the biggest obstacle that you're facing with candidates? And what are creative ways to troubleshoot that? So if you're not getting people to call you back, maybe you're taking too long to contact them. Maybe they're already, taken by then. So are you running into, childcare? Are you running into people being worried about safety? Are you running into, your wages aren't competitive enough, or your total offerings aren't competitive enough? What is it that you're seeing? And if you don't know the answer to that question, I encourage you to ask candidates. I see that you didn't get back to us. If there's any feedback, we appreciate it. And I end up getting, real-time feedback for that. If I have a candidate I've sent to a client and they don't end up taking the offer, I'm like, oh, just so that we can continue to be better, what is it that we didn't do that other places did? And it's so easy to ask that question and people will just tell you, and then you can revisit it and try again next time. So don't be afraid to have those conversations and, get that direct feedback from the people that you are trying to hire. Number 2, looking at what are those 2 or 3 areas that you have a competitive edge. You don't need to try to be anybody else. You don't need to try to be the highest paying company if that's not within budget. That does not make sense for your company. There are so many other non-monetary ways that you can show your competitive edge. And I have seen it. If that makes you feel more confident, I, have clients that are small, mid-sized businesses who also have been really impacted by the pandemic. And the number one answer has not been, raising all of the wages. But I have seen a lot of them really look at their processes and say, can we do flexible work? Can we offer benefits? Can we, adjust people's hours? Can we be more flexible with the time they work so they can attend their soccer practices? Really revisit that. Can you flex the hours so people have time to work out? I've seen health, and going back to the health and safety, those pairing. At our company, HR Annie, I'm so grateful because we have flexible work hours. And with all of that, I'm able to work out in the morning. And if I had, been at any other previous company of mine where we have, certain hours that we need to be within the office, I wouldn't have been able to do that in the mornings. And so that for me is a really strong engagement as an employee speaking directly to you. Number 3, document your process. Build efficiencies in those process. That's going back to the interviews. What steps do you do? Do you do a phone interview and then a video interview and then an in-person? Do you just do a phone interview and in person? What is it? There's no right answer, but make sure you have that written down so you're treating everybody the same way and know who's involved. And then once you have that, look and see, how can we make this more efficient? How can we make sure that there's 1 to 2 days between each step only? And I challenge you to try it and see the difference it makes in the candidates you're able to get. And then 4, feel free to call if you're stumped. I do have contact information on the last slide, so feel free to take that down. And again, at HR Annie, we're a consulting company. So even if you don't necessarily want help with doing recruitment for your companies, if you're like, I don't know where to start with this and I don't know what's competitive, we are talking to hundreds of candidates weekly, working with several companies in several different industries, all locally around here. And we've been able to successfully help a lot of people. And that is my purpose and what I find a lot of fulfillment in doing. So great. I want to open it up now to this Q&A. And I know Imran has some questions probably to fire away and input to add, since you have the experience as well, managing and being in the food and beverage industry and doing lots of recruitment yourself.
What I noticed, I guess there were three things that I wanted to just offer like kind of a testimonial, but I think that at the company that I ran before as the hiring manager, director of ops, and then this current one, I think the biggest thing was like we tried to give our employees a culture and then autonomy. And I think so I was looking at your bullet points and I was like, how does this work? Is this equation, how does it equal success? And so anyway, I think that that's gold for people to look at what you can highlight in your company and say, this is what we do best. And culture was a big one, because at any brewery or brew pub where I used to work before, they could go anywhere they want. There's so many options in Oregon. So what is it that we do different? It was just allowing employees to be more autonomous and not micromanaged, and also just be a part of a culture where everybody's voice is heard. And I think that was a big one for us. And we really did try to offer. So the next thing I was going to say to connect to that is we offered that in the interview process. I think it was us trying to tell them what life is like when you come to work here. And so the other thing that I was going to add is, I think the days where you get a job at a company and you're happy and you're jovial about that and it's great and you celebrate, and you don't know anything much about the company and you're like, I'm going to go in for my first day and I'm going to learn everything I need to know about this company. They're going to train me. I honestly think what you said is so important and so underrated and so under discussed. Today's job market is your company trying to offer as much insight as possible on what that candidate's going to be doing and reducing uncertainty. And I'm just big on reducing uncertainty because that's a big part of our culture. We don't like surprises. We like to go into situations knowing that we made a great decision. So the insights that I can offer are, how you interview is such a brilliant part of what you said, is such a brilliant part of the process, because if you're ready and you're efficient and you're explaining to them what they're going to be doing, that candidate may be more engaged in wanting to work at your company from the first conversation. I mean, that's really the difference. And I think you mentioned like, what materials are you collecting from them? Like, I think there's a reciprocation thing where candidates want materials from you, and materials in the form of, what am I going to be doing day to day? Who am I going to be working with? It's not all about like, how much do you pay me? And I think a lot of people especially what's maybe enculturated older school mentality, are like, just raise the salaries and we'll get more people.
Yeah.
And maybe you do, but I don't know if you get the retention. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on that. Have there been studies done, or have you noticed that when we're raising salaries, maybe you do get more candidates, maybe you do attract some more, maybe you can hire better, but are you really retaining more people just by raising your wages, right? So I'd be curious if you have any insight on that.
I do. And what is insane is that 2 years ago, I would have had a different answer, because I truly think 2 years ago, that would have been okay. But I have recently even just hired 2 people within different organizations who had competing offers. One of them was an HR manager. Hired her with one of our clients who's amazing, great culture. There's a lot of opportunity for growth. And as I was working with this client, I told them, we've got this amazing person, she is looking for a better culture. Right now, she's probably making a little bit more money than what we can offer. But the reason she's looking for a new position is because she wants to work at a company that cares about employees and has, a good environment. And that's why she's, talking with us. And so what I want to make sure that you're, holding up your end of the bargain here as we're going through this process, as I know you do with your existing employees, but make sure that she feels that through, you thanking her for her time interviewing too, with a follow-up email versus only expecting that back from her. how do we keep her engaged and have her feeling this culture, which is she's saying she is wanting, and let's make sure we let that shine through because we have it. And what ended up happening is, even after going through this process, she was interviewing with one other company, and the other company was offering her $15K more in salary. I think we were talking 75 versus 90. And she took the 75 because of how she felt when she went on site with them, because there were those follow-up emails, because of the interactions. And that was such a powerful thing for me to see in live action, because I had this feeling that was out there. And actually after that, I posted a poll on LinkedIn saying, hey, everybody, would you rather have the higher pay or work for a company with a better culture with, average pay? And the answer was going back to culture and flexibility and balance. And so, it was 75 to 25 on my poll. And I think like 115 people responded to it. So there it is.
I mean, I can attest to that. I always give people this really cheesy analogy, but if somebody offered me $200,000 more than what I make or something to go into a different state right now and work for really the same company in the same industry, I mean, I could just say no without even listening. I could say no because I don't want to move across states. And I know the people that I work with in the building I work with are a lot of the reason why I work there. Right. So I relate to that candidate. And I think what's cool about what you're saying is that if you're in a hiring position or executive level position or VP or whatever it is, like we have to, as best we can, put ourselves in the shoes of any level candidate that you're filling that position. I think that's one of the hardest challenges for anybody working at any company. That's probably why your company's so busy, because they need your help to do that, to relate to candidates and recruit and have the pulse of what's happening with the boots on the ground. Right. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the things that I'm glad you said that. And I think that it's great insight. The pay thing is an ongoing battle. And I think it's about establishing a bigger picture for some of the candidates that is, like you're saying, on that list of 5 things, which I don't have in front of me, but the list of 5 things is great because you can run with 2 or 3 of them. And hopefully that matches up with what gets them out of bed in the morning.
Yeah. The pay does have to be, market.
Yeah.
So I would say under market pay will be a little bit of a tough one to recruit somebody.
Absolutely.
But yeah. Paying, $10,000 more than, or $2 an hour more than other people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I always use the cheesy analogy of what wakes you up out of bed in the morning. Like, what is it that is your driving force when because our alarm goes off at whatever time. It's like, why are you jumping out of bed? Like, hopefully you're jumping out of bed. Hopefully you are. But I know that I'm lucky because there's not been a time in the last 12, 13 years since I finished graduate school where my alarms went off and I was like, I don't want to go to work. Like I'm lucky like that because I know I've matched up what I care about with what I do. Mm-hmm. And so I think that the secret sauce to like getting that perfect candidate is finding the candidate that has what your company has, and that motivates them essentially to get out of bed in the morning. And some people it is paycheck, but I think other people can fall into a category of any number of things you mentioned on some of your slides.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does any of our attendees have any questions that they want to put in the chat, or?
I haven't seen them yet.
Okay.
I'm going to call them out when they come. So please feel free to throw those questions in. We'll definitely ask. Ooh, Kurt's asking one. He said, how long do you foresee the candidate advantage to last? What happens after that?
That's a great question. That's a really great question. I don't know the answer to that question, but what I can say is that I don't see it going anywhere anytime soon. So I think once we do our homework and once we, adapt to this new way, it'll feel really second nature, and it'll end up, being actually an enjoyable process for you to be able to have this, 2-way interaction with candidates. Mm-hmm. But it's tough right now. There's lots of jobs and not as much talent. And what I will say with that, uneven balance is reviewing, are you able to hire people without certain technical skills? That's been my most favorite challenge of this year, is that I think previous years in recruitment, I've been like, okay, the client or, internally, we need to have somebody that has 5 years of experience, or they have to have this. And this year, there just has not been those people that are out on the job boards to even reach out to, or that are even engaging in conversations. And so I've been having to go back to clients and say, this might not be a possibility. So let's put together a game plan for going this other direction. And if you had somebody with these 3 technical skill or soft skills, like somebody that was really high achieving, self-driven, whatever, could you train them? And the answer has been yes, more than it has in the past. And it has been amazing seeing these people get an opportunity with companies and then thriving. And so I actually think anytime that we have some adversity like this, there comes innovation and different thoughts, and it could end up just turning your company around in a different way than you would have, expected if it would have stayed in a client or company driven market.
I love that. I actually was thinking, as we've had these 2 years of a completely different lifestyle and having to be flexible, working at home, all these different things. I've talked to some companies, and when we mention culture and explaining that, they kind of give me a deer in the headlights look, like, what? I think I know what that means. What are you referencing? I have an understanding of it, but I would love to hear you say what you think, or how you would explain culture and really giving folks a clean way of defining their own or figuring it out.
Yeah, I almost think there's like 2 pieces to it, and Imran, correct me or jump in whenever, but I think the first piece, I want to separate culture from mission and values, because I think sometimes those get really intertwined. There's the company's mission and values that's more like outward facing. What are we doing to help, our clients or the people that we're serving? Culture is internal. So how are your employees interacting with one another? How are employees interacting with management? How is leadership sharing information with companies? How are people feeling connected within your organization? How are they able to advance within your organization? And so when I think of companies with a very strong culture, that can look really different from each company, and they could all have a really strong culture, but it's not uniform. And so ways that I could, ways that I do see that come up is, do they invest in their employees? Are there ways that the employee feels that they are becoming better by being an employee of this organization? That's through the relationships they're building there. That's through advancement and learning opportunities that they're getting. That's one that comes to mind when I think of a company with a really strong culture. That also comes with, how are you staying connected with one another? Do you do, Zoom meetings? Do you have any in-person celebrations? Do you know when it's an employee's birthday? Do you know when they hit their 1-year anniversary? How is that announced? Is that celebrated? There's a lot of questions. It's paying attention to detail and the human aspect of employees versus only looking at what they can produce.
To follow up on what Jessica's saying, I mean, everything you said is right on target, but I think in the last business that I ran, it was a lot of my employees gave me it was so uptight, and my managers were, constantly telling me what to do, and I was constantly getting in trouble and getting written up if I was late, and they said the biggest difference here has been, because our whole philosophy was like inclusivity, empower everybody to be a leader and their own manager. And if they do make mistakes, talk to them. And so it was, even if I had an employee show up 15 minutes late for their shift, I would not address it right away. And then after their shift, I'd be like, so, you're supposed to be here at 4:30 and you got here closer to 5. Like, what was going on? And they're just like, oh, whatever, kids, traffic, I don't know. But the point was that we were trying to make it a conversation and a learning point, and not belittle somebody into feeling like, so really when we're going through building the culture, it's me bringing in coffee or pizza every Friday for my employees. Like, that was a part of our culture. It was just for them to feel like, oh, that's a cool thing that he does. And it's not prompted, it's not like a reward because we did good. It's just, that's a part of being a team here, so I think culture can mean a lot of things, like Jessica's saying, but really the definition of culture is a learned system and applied to, and it can be language, beliefs, patterns, insights. I mean, that's the definition. So when you apply that to a company, It's like, what is your language? What are your patterns, beliefs, insights, and norms, right? And which ones of those do you highlight to make it an appealing place for a person to clock in every day, or, metaphorically clock in every day?
Yep. Could not agree more.
That's great. Okay, so Kurt, and he wrote another question. He said, I suspect that there will be a period of correction in which many of these candidates snapped up early will re-enter the market. As such, patience may be a virtue here too.
Yeah,
Indeed.
it's very true. Build those connections outside of just seeing the value and filling your current opening.
Mhm.
If there's somebody that is worth engaging with, it's a long-term plan.
Absolutely. I was thinking, I made some notes from your fantastic slideshow, because I was like, ooh, I love all these things. But I was trying to think of maybe some quick steps, not quick, but quick and succinct steps that we could offer businesses. As we were looking at, we talked about safety, and we talked about different things that, people are thinking. And if they've got open jobs, they've got candidates, they're going on their website. Like, we know that people are trying to do their due diligence beforehand, and just say, ooh, do I really want to work here? They're more invested and they want to give time. Do you think it would be wise, or I'm trying to think of ways that businesses could get a step ahead? So like having a page on your website, or having a disclaimer, something like that, that talks about the safety and what you're doing. Like, at so-and-so, we are implementing these steps for safety, or if you can have a hybrid or flexible work office hours, say our building's smaller, so we are offering these different shifts, and make it a commonplace on the website so people could read that. Like, I don't know, I'm just trying to think of some key ways that they could actually put that on their website so folks know that, and then they can answer that quickly. And you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, one of the practices I really like to implement into every recruitment that I help with is making sure that the job ad has all of the relevant information at the top. So when people look at it, they instantly get hooked. So if we're having all the goods, or they're not on there at all, like, let's pretend that there's no pay, benefits, anything about safety, nothing about culture. It's all just about what you'll do. That's not very exciting to somebody as they're looking through hundreds of openings. So what are you putting at the top of your ad to make yourself stand out as one that somebody will actually click on? At the top, do you have a flexible schedule? Do you have your pay range listed so you don't waste anybody's time and they don't waste yours? It's all about transparency. What is it that you can offer? That this is the first step. And then when candidates apply, they're showing you what they can offer. So I haven't seen it as much of people posting those details on their website as I have seen that information incorporated into job ads. Or even if they have a careers page, maybe there's, a blurb at the top or whatnot. But again, knowing the difference between a job description and a job advertisement, and having two different documents might be somewhat similar, but clearly different documents for the two is a huge advantage that you'll get.
That's so great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, I was wondering how often, sorry, I'm looking through my notes here. How often do you think a business or company should revisit their mission statement and kind of do a culture check, if you will?
Yeah, I think that's tough to say, one size fits all, because it depends. If somebody goes through a merger, that's a great time. If somebody, adds a different location, maybe that's a great time. Maybe there's a dynamic shift between having one store and opening your second store, and how do those interact? So I think at different milestones in your business, it's important to revisit what matters to you. Why are we doing this? And then how do we share that information with our employees? And this is separate from recruitment, but what is equally as important as recruitment and retaining your current employees is the onboarding period. And so I recommend in your onboarding period, instead of rushing people to get to their desk and start producing, what if we have a moment, an hour, where we can talk about what is the mission here? What do we do here? Why do we do this? How did we even start doing this? And what is the impact that we're making out in the world? And just slowing down for a moment and sharing that fun story with people that are joining the organization. And so I forgot what the initial question was, and I ended up going on a little bit of a rant here, but revisiting culture
I'm
and
like,
values.
you're great.
Yeah. So I recommend, implementing that into your onboarding process, but reviewing it, as things change at your company. New leadership comes in, new ownership, new store, whatever those milestones are.
Oh, I love that. And I love that thought of including it in the onboarding, because I
Yeah.
do feel like the more you as a business owner talk about it, you could be explaining it and then you're like, note to self, I actually might need to revisit that point. Do you know what I mean? Like, because things are changing so much. And, from our last discussion, we were talking about through COVID, how just we have jumped like 6 years forward in technology.
Yeah.
I mean, this was on our last discussion with Keith and Emron. And that applies to us. That applies to every business. It's going to apply how we deal with life and work and our culture and our mission, or we should be considering it, saying, hey, how is this going to affect and change? And like, that's where I think truly in this process of hiring and looking at candidates, I do think you need to put in this new place we're at. And I love how you brought it to the forefront.
It's interesting to think about how that's one of the most important things to people. And it's so fun to ask people, how many of your employees do you think know your mission statement or could tell it to you if you ask them? What about your values? And it is shocking how many are not able to do that. So just as important it is to have a mission and a vision, it is just as important to share that and make sure everybody else is on board and on the same page.
I love it. I was just writing down, share that.
Sure.
I'm like, maybe we could encourage folks to go on and have a little session with their folks tomorrow or next week, right? And just say, hey, have we discussed our mission statement, our values, and why it's important? I think this is fantastic. Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm so excited. Are there any more thoughts that you guys have or want to share?
Not without going down a whole other rabbit hole.
I know. So many things. We might need to have, a second and third session. Yeah. Well, that's wonderful.
This part was helpful, hopefully.
Oh, it was wonderful. And I did put all of the information, everybody's information in the chat. So if you are here, please feel free to grab that. Jessica's information is right here. As you can tell, she's a wealth of knowledge. So if you're wondering your next steps that you want to take, or if you just have questions, if you're stuck, she is gracious, she is kind, and please send her an email, because HRN, they will help you figure out where you need to go. Are your timing, can they just send you an email, and then will you help them if they have different questions, and if it's something somebody else in your group might be able to answer that?
Yes, yeah. I can treat you as such.
I love it.
I know where
I know. I'm like, I love it. Well, and I also think it'd be great. Maybe our next step needs to be a little discussion on how to put together your best ad. You know how you're talking about your advertisements? Yeah. Because I think honing it, I think it's a whole new different ballgame of how, like we were just talking about what you need to ask and what you're doing for your actual hiring process. I think also it's just as important as to what you put into your job description out there in the world. Your job advertisement, is that what you called it?
Job advertisement. Exactly.
Yes, I think
our marketing tool.
The what?
It's our marketing tool.
I love it. Yes. So if you're interested in that too, which is very important, please reach out to Jessica as well. And then we're just so excited you were here. Emron, thank you for all your input too. Yes, if you have questions from him, I mean, he's been in a lot of stuff too, so I know he will answer anything as well, but we appreciate your time. And we thank you so much for this. I hope you guys have a fantastic day.
You as well.
Thank you so much. It was awesome.
Take care, everybody.